So not a qualifying child, if you haven't written these down yet, not a qualifying child, member of your household, okay? Now on this, they're just meaning your tax household, okay? Member of the household, gross income, so income is a big one here, and support. Remember that whole support thing. So now we're talking about, do you support someone in your bubble? You know, is this somebody that's not a child that you support in your household, okay? Let's see, your 2-year-old son lives with your parents and meets all the tests to be their qualifying child. Can he be your relative? No, because he can only be on one return, right? Okay. Your son lives with you, but is not your qualifying child because he's 30 and does not meet the age test. Can he be your qualifying relative? Yes. He may be your qualifying relative if the gross income and support tests are met. So there are weird situations where they can kind of overlap a little bit. Okay? But I promise you guys, in reality, it's not this hard. It's very, very usually cut and dry. Like I said, the determining factor on the dependents and the children and the relatives, there's going to be help tools. So they don't even have to know you're looking at that. You can just be, help. I need to know about these, and it'll lay it out for you, But most of the time, guys, the way we train you when we do our corporate side of things and we're looking at how we start a return and, we actually talk to the client and look at their data sheet, you're going to know by the time you get to that point if that person's supposed to be in their return. Not a qualifying child. Jack is single and supports as members of the household his girlfriend Mary and Mary's 3-year-old daughter. We literally just talked about this, right? Mary and her daughter lived all year. Mary has no income and she's not required to file. Because she does not have a filing requirement, Mary's daughter is not treated as a qualifying child of Mary or any other taxpayer. And Jack may claim the child as his qualifying relative, provided all other requirements are met. Okay? And that's just talking for dependent, okay? You cannot do, and we'll go over that later, you cannot do EIC HOH, okay? What we're talking about is Rita's single, someone lives in her tax household other than a child, she wants to claim them as an other dependent. That's who we're talking about here, okay? There could also be qualifying relatives that you're related to. They could be a member of the household that get you those EIC credits, okay? But to get those extra credits, they have to be legally or biologically related, okay? That's kind of the key when you're looking at the other big credits that we know people get big refunds on. Most of those people are legally and biologically related, okay? Doesn't mean you can't claim their small exemption because it doesn't really exist anymore, but there's a small credit you can get. But we're talking about 2 groups of people meet this test. Those are not related to you but live with you all year, okay? Not related but live with you all year. Those who are related to you, described in one of the ways listed under relatives who do not have to live with you, okay? There are relatives that don't have to live with you, okay? There's also people that are not related to you but do have to live with you for you to claim them as dependent. So the way to look at that is, if they're not related to you, they have to live with you all year. If they are related to you, you might be able to claim them if some other stuff's met. That's the easiest way to think about it. It's a harder standard if they're not related to you. So, Susie Jane down the street lived with me in my apartment. I paid for all her stuff. She's a good friend. She didn't work last year. Can I take her exemption? Well, if she lived with you all year, not related, but live with you, might be a member of your household to claim their exemption, okay? But if she's not a child and she's not related, you can't get those extra EIC credits that we'll talk about later. That's kind of the differential there. It's kind of hard to pick up on until we introduce the other information, but if we just kind of remember the biological and legal, it kind of helps you. Relative, and you may or may not have this in there, guys. We'll have these charts all over the place. Relatives who do not have to live with you. Okay, kind of a basic thing, okay? Child, stepchild, descendant, brother, sister, father, mother, grandparent, stepfather, stepmother, niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, son-in-law, blah, 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 blah. Now, who do not have to live with you, because remember, if they're related or if they're a child, they may not have to live with you because you can already claim them because they're related. Okay? Kind of what we were talking about earlier. There's times you can have space there for military or whatever, school, okay? Just know that these ones that are legally and biologically related may not have to live with you, okay? Member of household or relationship test. An eligible foster child is an individual who is placed with you by an agency. A cousin meets this test only if he lives with you as a member of your household. A person does not meet this test if any time during the year the relationship between you and that person violates local law. Okay, a cousin is the only weird one that's related that may need to live with you all year. It's a really weird rule. I don't make the rule. I know it's weird. But a cousin meets the test only if he or she lives with you as a member of your household all year. It's a really odd rule. I can't tell you. That's just the rule. So, yeah.
You wouldn't think it's...
Unless it's a child, right? Because
Yeah.
then they might be qualifying child. We're talking about probably here like an adult cousin, okay? Unless they're mentally disabled or physically disabled, and then they might fall back to the other. But cousin is just a weird rule. It's talking about local law. Back when it was illegal to have, it was actually illegal on some of the books for like same-sex marriage and all that kind of good stuff. So that's what that's talking about. It was considered violating local law. Children in Canada or Mexico. A child who lives in Canada or Mexico may be your qualifying relative. You may be able to claim the dependent child as dependent. If the child does not live with you, the child does not meet the residency test to be a child. If the person the child does live with are not U.S. citizens and have no gross income, then they are not taxpayers. So the child is not a qualifying child of another taxpayer, and the child is your qualifying relative if the different things are met. You cannot claim a dependent child who lives in a foreign country other than Canada or Mexico. Okay? Unless the child is a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident alien, or U.S. national some part of the year. That whole paragraph is in your support stuff. I've never had to use it once. I think I've used it once in 10 years. We do some Hispanic returns and some other nationality returns. This has not usually come up. Okay, because most of the ones we do are going to be Marshallese, and they have a special, they're basically just like U.S. citizens, so this is not going to pertain to them. And I think a few times I've had an issue where we've had some taxpayers who wanted to claim children that were not in Canada or Mexico. It was like other South American countries. So unless they were a U.S. citizen or an alien or a national for some part of the year, we wouldn't be able to claim them. And that kind of has been tweaked over the years. So if there was never an issue, we can kind of get with tax support, and follow up with that. Something of that nature may be on your quiz, maybe on your competency test. But that's such a big thing that I couldn't even tell you what it says. So I am not a good memorization person. So you'll hear me a lot. I'll be like, I know what that is, but I couldn't tell you what the form number is. I can tell you everything on the form, but I'm not the one you want to ask. If you want form blah, 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 I'm not that person. It's just not one of my gifts. I always have to go look up the numbers. It's just not something I memorize. Okay, this is one of those things Gustavo was asking about, things that change year to year. Some of the credit amounts will change, and some of the exemption amounts will change. Some of what people are allowed to make will change. I believe I gave you the sheet in your review packet from last week. There is a sheet in there about income levels, who files, who doesn't, that sort of thing. Gross income for the year must be less than $41.50. Why it says 16, I don't know. I'm assuming that is a typo, okay, in their stuff.
Just up for the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's good.
Yeah, filing requirement for most taxpayers. We should be in that one. We won't put it on there anymore. So I'll get you that amount. It's what the old exemption amount used to be. What we used to call an exemption amount. See if it's on here. Because it actually changed it. Your exemption amount for dependent used to be, it would have an exemption amount, so I think it was $42.50 and $18. I'll double check that one in our materials. But yeah, they used to have a typo in there. But like on this, the way I would always look is married filing separately. The income used to be the exemption amount. And now in the new chart it says it's $5. You have income over $5 and you want to file separate, you have to file a tax return. That's the other reason you don't want to file separate. Used to, you were given the exemption amount of $4,000 or $5,000, but now it's like, you want to file separate if you make anything, we're taxing it. So that is the new reason you don't want to do separately. But yeah, these change every year, so you'll have an updated amount. Even on our tests, they do it on the year before's information because the new stuff hasn't come out yet. So when you do your competency exams sometime in December, you're going to be using 18's information. So tax year 18, which was prepared in January through April of this year. That's the actual amount you'll use. Not saying that's it, because it looks like they did a typo, but it's 441 or 42, somewhere in there. Anyway, the main thing is, guys, I hardly have ever looked at gross income to determine any of this. I mean, usually people that are putting relatives on there, they usually don't work. This is usually people that have moved in with you, family members you're supporting. A lot of them don't work. Every now and then they have some, and do you think they're going to be honest with us? How do we know if they worked or not? We don't. That is another thing, that I try to be more careful about. Luckily, I've not had it come up a lot where I've had a lot of people trying to claim relatives. They're either in the house or actual legal relatives that just didn't work at all. That's kind of a catchy area as well, because how do you know somebody's just not stealing your social security card and saying Gustavo was my friend who lived with me and I'm claiming it? Well, you don't. So I have even took it as far as, okay, I need documentation that this person even lives in your house. It's not legally required, but I mean, you're just telling me some random person you're going to say they're in your household and put them on your return. So usually in that situation, if they're not disabled or if there's not something weird, they'd come to the office with them. I'd say, can you bring them by so I can just verify they lived in your house? Because it's not a requirement necessarily for us for credit-wise yet on just a relative or a member of the tax household, but I also don't want somebody just taking off with their best friend's social security card and saying, hey, here's their birthday, they were in my house, I'm going to claim them. It just, I would think it would leave it open for, I don't know, a lot of stuff. Okay, you must provide more than half the support. But, that's just, you got to be the one supporting them if you want to put them on there. Qualifying relatives, same thing, total support. Okay. Your mother received $2,400 in Social Security benefits. She also had $300 in interest. She paid $2,000 towards the rent and $400 for recreation. Total rent was $2,820. You paid all of her food expenses. Do you pass the support test? No. Your mother's total expenses were $4,615. She paid $2,400 and you paid $2,250. Okay, this is not even reality because those amounts are crazy. Never happens. Most, your parents are also one of those that you can claim that don't live with you. Most middle-aged to older adults, a lot of them claim their elderly parents. So this is probably not even accurate. $2,400 for the year, that's not very much. Okay, it's actually probably more than that, but rent's gonna be more than that. So I know many of adults that have claimed their older parents, that they take care of them, they pay for everything, they help with their health stuff, they usually claim them. So that's just a stupid slide. Try to hear me say that. Likewise, though, we have to ask the questions. Were they living with you? Did they live in a home? Were you paying for all those expenses? We had a few last year, so you always do want to ask those questions. So if you thought it didn't meet that support test, we could visit it, kind of see what answer we could come up with on that. Darlene spent $2,400 on food, clothing, and shelter for her 26-year-old son. Okay, he's over 24. She received $3,000 from welfare for her son. Can she claim a dependency exemption? If the computer will work. No. The $3,000 from welfare is more than half of his total support. Darlene cannot claim a dependency exemption for her son because she did not provide more than half of the support. But I would say if she's getting $3,000 from somewhere for him, we have bigger issues than what she's filing on her taxes. And don't get me wrong, we'll see this. You'll have people that'll come in with a W-2 of $3,000 and say they want to be head of household. We have to be really careful. Because truly, can somebody that made only $3,000 be head of household? Probably not. Will I stand here and say I've never done that? I probably have at one point and said, okay, that's cute, whatever. We're supposed to ask them questions of that, okay? Because $3,000 probably is not going to support the household. Probably be more likely you'd be 3,000 to maybe take their dependent credit, but head of household probably wouldn't. Okay, so we have to be careful of those. We don't see it too often, but there will be people that will come in and have those dependents. Well, who else, what's the other income of the other parent? They weren't giving you money for this kiddo, because that's not very much to take care of a house, and, so we do kind of have to ask those things. Okay, I'm just gonna look through this. Okay, okay. Susan has 3 children who can be claimed as her dependents. In addition, Susan gave birth to a little boy who lived only 3 months. Can Susan claim the little boy as a dependent for any credit she qualifies for? Yes, a child who was born during the year can be claimed as a dependent even if the child died in the same year. Something we have to be careful on, and this goes for this situation or any of those others where there's an absence, you put it in the system as them living there the whole year. Even though, they might have been gone for 6 months to school, the system wants that whole year answer. It's just a weird quirk of all of our past systems. I can't say that our new Drake we're getting that's custom made for us will be the same way, but I know the old software, you just have to put that they live the whole year. Because if you don't, it goes crazy on you. Okay? So it doesn't really account for all the little, they're gone here, they're gone there. We just have to say they're there for the whole year. Joseph has $300 of tax-exempt income that he used to support himself while away at college. Should Joseph's parents use this income in calculating his support? Yes. Support includes all amounts. $300 ain't going to cover him 50%, so it's kind of a dumb thing. But Pedro is filing a joint return with his wife. She and their son live in Mexico and in the U.S. for the rest of 9 months, and in the U.S. for the rest of 18. He pays all of their support. Pedro and the son are U.S. citizens. Can he claim his son as his dependent? Yes. Okay. Now, if that wasn't Mexico, if it was somewhere else, still shouldn't matter because the son's a U.S. citizen. If the son would have not been a U.S. citizen, that's a whole other issue. We might be looking at I-10 or some sort of other issue that we can't do anyway, so we probably have to send him to the IRS if he wanted to put him on the return. Fred lives with his girlfriend Sue and her 6-year-old child Amy. Usually when it starts out that way, it's some sort of weird situation, okay? Fred provides over half the support for Amy. Both Sue and Amy lived all year with Fred. Sue has no income, and she has not signed the 8332 allowing the non-custodial parent to claim Amy. Okay? Like I said, the whole thing could be wiped out because it tells you it's a girlfriend, and it's her kid, so it's not his kid. You automatically know, okay, he can't do anything to this kid. The answer's probably going to be no, right? That's how you have to think for the test. Now, don't overthink it, but a lot of times the answer's no, okay? Amy does not meet the relationship test. They both meet all the tests to be Fred's qualifying relatives, okay? But Amy is not Sue's qualifying child because Sue does not have a filing requirement. So the best he could do is if nobody else is going to claim those two, he could do single and try to use their exemptions or do the new other dependent credit that just came out last year. I think it's like $500 a piece or something random. It's kind of a new thing. Because in the past you didn't get much credit for them. You got a little bit of exemption for them, but you didn't get an actual credit. So there is another dependent credit this year that they might get qualified for, but not for HOH. You still have to be single as far as your filing status. Let's see if there's anything else. Because you guys are going to have a test. Okay, that's all of Chapter 2 as far as qualifying relatives and qualifying children. Okay, you're going to see those are going to make more sense to you when we look at filing status here in a second, because those play into how you know what your filing status is. Okay, any quick questions? We got about 2-3 minutes for quick questions. Filing status is pretty. I like filing status because it goes quick, and I think it's probably filing status is probably one of the most easily understood things. You know, maybe not by clients, but usually by us. Clients usually come in, and guys, we have them so many times. They'll say, "Oh, I'm head of household married." No. You know, they misunderstand, and they come in, and they'll say that. I don't think our actual paperwork we have them fill out has them classify their own status, Usually it's just taxpayer and spouse, and then we do the rest from there after they fill it out. Obviously, it's really easy if there's two of them together. They have their sheet. It says taxpayer, it says spouse, kids are there as dependents. We just have to make sure we ask them if they're legally married, because I don't know how many times we've had them come in and say, oh, it's my spouse, when they legally weren't married. They just tried to say it was spouse, but literally they had not had a wedding ceremony. They were not in Oklahoma. They just consider themselves. I'm like, that's not how this works. You have to legally have had a legal ceremony and legally have a something on file. As of right now, the IRS does not have that as one of the auditable things on our side. So we do not have to see a marriage license. We do not have to see, a separation necessarily, because usually if we ask for one of them, we have to ask everyone for them. And it's just not an audited thing normally. Okay, children obviously is a different story, but whether they're married or not, it's more of the honor system with the IRS.
But common law doesn't qualify for that as far as kind of a document or something?
Nope, just their word. Yeah, and I'll double check Oklahoma and see what answer I get. I may just call the state and ask
The
them.
only reason I asked is,
Yeah.
a friend of mine just left her,
She did. Yeah.
whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah.
And they were together for 7 years,
Mhm.
and she's got a lawyer, and they said there was no common law with it.
Anymore. Yeah. So I'll find out for sure.
Yeah.
And one year we had an interesting one. We had somebody who was legally still married to somebody else, but then had been with this other person for like 4 or 5 years and wanted to say they were. I'm like, no, if you're still legally married to that one, you can't do common law with it, So that was a whole fun deal. Yeah, you'll get all kinds of, once you start seeing some of the questions, then you've started to see them today that'll be similar to what's on a competency test. When they come in, you'll be like, oh, that sounds just like one of our problems. We see all kinds. I mean, every year we see new ones that we didn't even think of, so. I don't know how he's got this. How is that there? And there's nothing on my screen. I think it's because he didn't do this. Maybe. Maybe not. I'm gonna have to ask him.
That's not a touch screen, is it?
Mm-mm.
Go around that one, whatever it was.
Get over there. No, it's being facetious on me here. I think it's because my first one he started with. That is interesting. Why is it up there and not on my screen? Because it should be on my screen. Oh, we'll scroll through here. Maybe it'll catch up with itself. There we go. Now it's popped up on my screen. Okay. So filing status, okay? Filing status determines the requirements, standard deduction, tax rate, and if certain deductions and credits apply. This is just informational. You probably shouldn't even have to. It's just informational. I'll use this. It seems to be working quicker now. Okay, unmarried persons. This 100% will be on your test. To be considered unmarried, you are considered unmarried for the whole year if on the last day of the year you are unmarried or legally separated from spouse under a divorce or separate maintenance decree. Okay? Also, you're considered unmarried if you've not been together over that 6-month period. Remember when we said earlier, I think it was when you were claiming a child, they had to be with you over 6 months? Same similar thing. Have you been separated for more than 6 months, lived in a different household, or someone's moved out over that 6-month period, you can be considered unmarried, even though you're still legally what?
Married.
Why is that important? You don't have to file married then, right? You're considered unmarried. Now, I believe the one caveat is, and it may talk about this in a minute, you have to have a dependent to be considered unmarried. Okay? If you're single and you're just married, it's just you two, you can't just say you're not married. So I think either they need to put that in there, or maybe it's on one of the other slides in a minute. But to be considered unmarried, have to have a dependent, but it's going to be on the return. Okay? Has to be more than 6 months. So it may be on another slide. We'll see. Marriage of a same-sex couple is treated the same as the marriage of a man to a woman. Term spouse in this chapter includes an individual married to a person of the same sex. I'll see how the state is treating it now. I don't even remember because I haven't dealt with it in so long. I do have quite a few homosexual clients. None of them are married though, so I had to really deal with it. So I had to mess with it. You'll hear that a lot where I'll say something and it's like, well, they haven't come in the office so we don't focus on it. Because we have so much other stuff we have to do, you'll hear me say that, well, we'll cover that later, or we haven't had to deal with that, so we just haven't looked into it. Because I know Gustavo was asking about business returns. In our old software, we used a different platform. They actually had a version of Drake they used for business. We just never learned it because we didn't have to. We just didn't have enough clients coming in that needed it. We do now. We're almost to that point where we need it. And we'll have to see if they provide us something with the new Drake that's going to be ours. Okay, filing status. You are married and living together.